Captain Midnight.
So last week I saw It, and I have to say, it put a huge smile on my face. That may seem like an odd reaction to a horror movie featuring a bunch of, child murders, but as a longtime fan of Stephen King, I was thrilled by it. And though the film is probably not the best movie adapted from a Stephen King story, that'd probably be Misery, The Shining, maybe Shawshank Redemption, I'd argue that it's the most Stephen King of all the movies based on his work. Because even though it changes a lot when adapting his mammoth novel about Derry, Maine to the screen, it retains his novel's core themes, the horrors of childhood, and the sins of the past resurfacing to wreak havoc on the present. Alright, so let's talk about The Shining. It may seem a little weird to begin a video about it by talking about Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, but I think it makes an important contrast to this movie. Famously, King doesn't like Kubrick's film, which confuses a lot of people because most consider it to be an improvement over King's original novel. I like the movie, but when you read the book, it's actually easy for me to see where the author is coming from. Kubrick was one of the greatest visual artists of the 20th century, and those skills are on full display in The Shining. But he was also a very cold, very clinical filmmaker when it came to his characters. Where King saw Jack Torrance's descent into alcoholism and madness as the tragic downfall of a basically good man, Kubrick's film envisioned the character as sleazy and creepy from the very beginning. Stephen King was battling his own problems with alcoholism while trying to raise a family when he was writing the book, and as a result, you can tell that he empathized a lot with Jack Torrance. In many ways, Jack was a semi-autobiographical character, a novelist trying to battle his inner demons, just like King. Stanley Kubrick, on the other hand, seemed to have nothing but contempt for him. And Jack Nicholson's portrayal of Jack Torrance, as great as it was creepy and off-putting well before he went insane. And I'm not saying that's a bad choice on Kubrick's part, because he really made the material his own. But it definitely doesn't feel like a Stephen King story. And that's where It comes in, because even though it makes some major changes to the source material, it understands what so many Stephen King adaptations fail to. Just how much he loves his characters, even the ones that wind up very dead. This is especially true when King writes kids, something he's always been pretty good at. Every kid in It is carefully crafted to be unique and are much deeper characters than we're used to seeing in your standard issue studio horror film. To quote King himself, "One of the things I want to do in all my novels is to create characters who are fundamentally decent by and large." That may seem like a simple statement, but when you look at the modern horror genre, it's filled with uninteresting, simplistic, and especially unlikable characters. Like, I can't tell you how many horror movies I've seen, from the Paranormal Activity films to the Saw sequels, and even all the way back to 80s slasher films, that just don't care about its characters at all. You're not just okay with them dying, oftentimes you're actively cheering for them to catch an axe to the face, because really that's all they were created to do. Stephen King, whatever his flaws as a writer, has never allowed that to be the case in his stories. Whether you're talking about a scared kid with a stutter or an insane, awful fan, he writes all of his characters with care and compassion, making sure that you understand their point of view, even if what they're doing is horrible. I think this, more than anything, is what has made him such a popular writer for over 40 years. He cares about these people, and he can make you care too. Then, when they catch an axe to the face, you're actually invested.
I'm gonna scare the hell out of you.
Horror movies about a group of young friends are pretty much a dime a dozen, and most of the time these groups don't actually feel like they would be friends with each other. Maybe this is a weird example, but after It, I actually started thinking about the movie Unfriended, and how much better it could have been. In case you don't remember Unfriended, and really, why would you? It was a movie that took place entirely on a computer screen while you watched the characters deal with the ghost that was haunting them online. Now, as dumb as that may sound, the movie actually found some pretty creative ways to use the social media angle to their advantage. It should have been a pretty good time, but I didn't enjoy Unfriended at all. I kind of hated it, and the reason for that is pretty simple. I hate these people. They were just awful, horrible individuals. And I'm not saying I can't enjoy a horror movie about bad people, that's definitely not the case. But Unfriended wanted us to care about this group. They wanted us to get invested in them and their dumb love triangles, and I just couldn't. Nothing about them was interesting or worth caring about. When the script sees its own characters as disposable plot devices, why shouldn't the audience? It is the complete opposite of this. Even most of the scary Pennywise scenes develop its core group. Who they are, what they care about, and of course, what they're afraid of. Each Pennywise sequence shows us their insecurities, one by one. You can criticize the structure and say that it's a bit repetitive by showing us each kid's vision of Pennywise back to back, but I think that ignores how it manages to scare you and develop its characters at the same time. This is something more horror films should do, but honestly very few pull it off. Usually in movies like Unfriended or Ouija, or a million other cookie-cutter studio horror movies, we're given about 30 minutes to get to know these paper-thin characters we don't care about, and then we watch them get taken out one by one. It is different. It's a movie that invests just as much time in its characters as its monster. Now, it doesn't always pull this off perfectly. For one thing, I think the scare scenes could have been done a little bit better by just being a little more subtle, especially in the sound design. And Mike kind of gets slighted in this version of the story. But for the most part, you really get the feeling that the director cares just as much about the friendships and dynamics in the Losers Club as he does about Pennywise. And that's exactly what you want from a Stephen King adaptation. It is breaking all sorts of box office records, basically confirming that the creative team behind this film will get a chance to finish the story they started in this movie. And I'm pretty happy about that, because I can't wait to see what the other half of this awesome, bizarre novel will look like on the big screen. But I have to admit, it leaves me a little worried too. Because these box office totals aren't let's make one great sequel and go out on a high note numbers, those are massive franchise numbers, like let's milk this thing to the last drop numbers. It seems inevitable that Warner Brothers will try to plan a ton of movies around this. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we eventually get a Pennywise Origins film or something. And that would be kind of a shame, because as great as Pennywise is, it was never about him. Not really. It is about this one group of friends, their journey and their trauma. If you reduce it down to the scary clown, you're kind of missing the point. But for now, I'm really looking forward to It Chapter 2 and seeing the completion of one of Stephen King's weirdest and most enjoyable stories. Hey guys, sorry this was so late. I had some slight power outage issues with Hurricane Irma, but everything should be back to normal now and back on schedule. So I will be seeing you guys again soon. Thanks for watching.